Trudeau was seen as being very pro Punjab. He would attend functions, wear the kurta pajama, dance, etc., which was all very kosher, all very good. But then he was also seen as being close to the radicals. The Indian government has been putting the onus of reining them on the Canadian government, and the Canadian government's response has always been that there are certain rights that are allowed to all of our citizens, and we cannot take any action against the protests because they are under the law, they are legally tenable. The relations began to sour very early on. Justin Trudeau came to power in 2015 and Prime Minister Modi came to power in 2014. And Trudeau was seen as being very pro Punjab. He would attend functions, wear the kurta pajama, dance, etc., which was all very kosher, all very good. But then he was also seen as being close to the radicals. Although Canada has always maintained that he's not close to the violent radicals, the fact remains that there were occasions when he was, there was, for instance, one function where the Prime Minister invited Jaspal Athwal, who was convicted for killing a cabinet minister. So that, though the invitation was rescinded later, but some pictures got out, there were leaks. And subsequently, that was the beginning of this whole, not just that, there are a series of events. And India strongly felt that he was pro-radical. So the first time a minister from Trudeau's cabinet came to India was in 2017. So this was Hardeep Singh Sajjan. He was a defense minister at that time and he'd come to Punjab, to his village in Hoshiarpur. The Punjab state chief minister refused to meet him while accusing him of hobnobbing with separatists. So that was one. And then 2018, subsequently in 2018, Trudeau visited India and he got a very frosty reception. The Prime Minister did not turn up to receive him. He was received by the Agriculture Minister. And in fact, it was the NRIs who kind of persuaded the Chief Minister of Punjab to meet him in Amritsar, which they finally did. And at that time, the Chief Minister handed him a list of radicals, which in fact included the name of Hardeep Singh Nijjar as well. So all of this carried on for quite some time, and in 2018, there seemed to be a thaw of sorts, for they reached an agreement for sharing intelligence. And in December, Canada released its annual report, a security report, in which for the first time it mentioned Khalistan extremism. And it said that though they were not large numbers, but it existed, that Khalistan extremism was very much there. That was the first admission. But very soon, in fact, in April, I think, in April 2019, there was a lot of pressure on the Liberal Party government to remove those references, and which was done. So just a day before the Baisakhi parade, we got this revised report in which all the references to Khalistan extremism were deleted. This caused a lot of furor back home in Punjab, where Captain Amarinder Singh objected to it. More recently, the tension escalated last year, 2022. The Trudeau government, the Liberal Party, got into an alliance with the NDP, headed by Jagmeet Singh, who's come out quite openly in support of the so-called unofficial referendums going on in Canada. So I think one of the causes for the escalation of tension are those referendums. So they have been covered very well. The first referendum in November last year had Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, head of the organization which is outlawed in India, the organization called Sikhs for Justice. He leading a sloganeering mob of people. A lot of media attention was given to that event, and Canada came under fire for letting it happen. Subsequently, after Nijjar was killed this year in June, there were protests outside the High Commission, Indian High Commission, and what was really very damaging were posters with the photographs of Indian officials saying that these were wanted and these are the people behind the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who incidentally last year the NIA had declared him a fugitive, and they had a reward on him, and he was accused of a killing in Punjab. So that really soured the relations between the two countries, because the High Commissioner there, he wrote a letter to the Canadian government saying that you must rein in these elements and they pose a grave threat to our people, the High Commission staff, and Indian government also duly took note of it. This G20 summit as well, there was no official meeting, no one-on-one official meeting between Trudeau and Prime Minister Modi, and I believe they met on the sidelines of another conference, and where the Prime Minister says that Prime Minister Modi says he told him in no uncertain terms that they have to rein in these separatist elements in Canada, and Trudeau is now saying that he told the Prime Minister about the intelligence they have about Indian involvement in Nijjar's killing. How long, since when did the Khalistan movement start in Canada? Old-timers tell us that it started long back. So there was this person, there was this Khalistan ideologue called Jagjit Singh Chauhan, who first visited Washington, US, and then he came to Canada, and he was the first person in the 1970s to start raising this bogey of Khalistan, of how it was important for the Sikhs to have a separate Sikh nation. This did not get much traction. I'm told that in 1982, somebody even printed Khalistan passports and flags, but when these guys tried to join the Baisakhi Day parade, they were beaten up and they had to go remove their flags, and only then were they allowed to join the parade. So there was very little support for Khalistan at that time, and it was something, it was more of some people coming, giving lectures in gurudwaras and people listening to them, and that's about it. But it took a very serious turn in 1984. So after the Operation Blue Star and the 1984 anti-Sikh riots, it was that time that a lot of people, we call them the dark decade in Punjab, the militancy. So a lot of people migrated, they sought asylum in Canada. And that was because of some extrajudicial killings in Punjab. And they sought asylum in countries like Canada, UK and Australia, and some of them in the US as well. So it was then a group of people got together because they already had grievances against the state back home. They started garnering support, and then you had Babbar Khalsa International. So World Sikh Organization also came up, but that was intrinsically, they modified their agenda, and they said we are here to look after the interests of Punjabis. But Babbar Khalsa was definitely very rabid, and one of the Canadian Talwinder Singh Parmar, who headed the Canada faction of Babbar Khalsa, is considered the mastermind of the Kanishka bombing, 1985 Air India Kanishka bombing, one of the most horrific incidents of terrorism on Canadian soil, because it killed more than 300 people and 80 of them were children. So it was a terrible, terrible thing, and later the inquiry found out that had due importance being given to the intelligence flowing out about the involvement of these groups, maybe the bombing could have been avoided. So that was also one of the periods, one of the lows between India and Canada. There are some gurudwaras which are being controlled by these fringe groups. who have these long held grievances, and there has not really been any effort as such by the Canadian government or by the Indian government, or both of them together, to find out a way to resolve this. The Indian government has been putting the onus of reining them on the Canadian government, and the Canadian government's response has always been that there are certain rights that are allowed to all of our citizens, and we cannot take any action against the protests because they are under the law, they are legally tenable. Even for the referendum, which doesn't hold any sanctity at all. It is Pannu's referendum, so the only sanctity it has is probably the one that has been given by him. It doesn't have any official legality or any such thing. But the government, the Canadian government, says that that too is above law. It doesn't violate the local laws, so they cannot really act against the referendum. So Canada, the point Canada has been making is that the Khalistanis are a fringe group. They are they are a minuscule minority, and they are being given undue importance by India. Whereas India has been saying that a lot of criminals, a lot of gangsters, a lot of separatists, radicals, extremists have taken refuge in their country, and that they have exchanged this huge list, I think, of about over 20 people belonging to organizations proscribed and outlawed in India, that they are there, and no action is being taken against them, and that those individuals sitting there regularly plot assassinations back home in India. In fact, Sidhu Moosewala case, which really blew up here, the assassination of Sidhu Moosewala. So the fingers again were pointed at a person called Goldie Barad, Satinder Barad, who had fled India to Canada. Now Canada says they don't know about Goldie Barad, but India maintains that he is very much there and no action is being taken against them. So this has become a sticking point between the two countries.